Hello, everybody, and welcome to Motion Design Hotline. This is our very fifth episode of this thing. We're 5 episodes in here. I'm Evan Abrams, the guy you probably know from this channel, where we talk about After Effects, motion design, tutorials of the like. You're probably a subscriber, and you somehow have notifications turned on. You are a very special person. We're on here with Kyle Hamrick. Kyle Hamrick is here, as usual, pretty normal having Kyle with us. And Kyle, thanks for taking the time out of your day to come and be on this wacky program.
I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Well, I know it pulls you away from repairing your various light cycles there on the grid. So yes. I just want to thank you for doing that. I know it's very difficult to get away from. You know what? I'm not going to do any more Tron things. I don't remember enough things about Tron. That was. Even the second Tron was not my favorite. Today,
next week, I'm going to be using CGI to de-age myself.
Oh,
a lot of the second Tron. So I'm still rendering right now.
Right. Well, that's how we do. we're gonna Kevin Bridges you all over the place, or Jeff Bridges. It's Jeff Bridges.
It is.
Anyway, folks, we're talking about Tron because we're going to go inside the computer today. We're going to kick it off. Our kickoff question is going to be about diving into the toComp expression, which I'm told doesn't mean to computer, according to Kyle anyway. This is an expression that I get wrong all the time. Like 100% of the time I type it out, I have to go Google why I did it wrong, why it doesn't work the way I think it does. Because you can do toComp dot something, you can do something dot, it could be everywhere. You can put a thing inside the thing. So that's kind of the idea here. And on this episode, for our very first time, on our very 5th episode, we have a fabulous prize to give away. So we're going to be giving away something called the MultiParent rigging, a little script. It's a little plugin. It's available at aescripts.com from Bear Studios. We're going to show you how that thing works. It essentially allows you to parent one layer to 2 other layers, much like, well, actually, you can parent up to like 10 layers. It's pretty nuts. So it takes a village to raise a layer. It takes 10 parents to boss around one layer. But this is super interesting because we're talking about things that are referenced to other things, right? So that's kind of what we're getting into today. So Kyle, how about without further ado, why don't you take it away? But all of you in the chat, all you early joiners, all you folks coming out, joining us here, we would love it if you could bring more people with you. So if you want to win that cool prize, then please just tweet about the show and send people to the URL motiondesignhotline.com. That's right.
It brings you right here.
We have a URL right now, and we're just using it for forwarding. So that's kind of how you win fabulous prizes. But that's basically it. So Kyle, talk us about toComp. We had questions about this previously. They fill our inboxes all the time. What am I talking about? What are we doing?
So last week we had a question about seeing motion paths for something that was inside of a shape layer.
Right.
And the short answer to that, which you can obviously go back and watch the longer answer, is that you can't get motion paths for things that are inside a shape layer. That's just the way it works. But there is an expression function called toComp that you can use to do that and do several other things. So I have some examples for you here, and I'm going to kind of explain how that works. But first, I'm going to talk about layer space versus comp space versus world space and what those mean, because that's ultimately what we're dealing with. And so even if you're not into expressions, it's a useful thing to know, because a lot of people don't really understand that that's the way that this works.
That's right. And if anyone joins in late, this is all going to be recapped quite a lot. So it's all going to be archived forever. So, if we make any oopsies, it's all right here. All right. So, Kyle, we're looking at your screen.
Oh, there we go.
Take us through it.
So I'm going to talk us through it here. And then, as has been the case, I will have this project posted on the Milanote board that we put out as part of the show notes.
Right.
So you'll be able to download this project and play around with it yourself. But, if I skip over something in here, feel free to ask us in there.
Yeah.
So let's take a second here and first talk about what we're dealing with, okay? So a layer's position is actually, those are the coordinates of the layer's anchor point in comp space. So let's talk about that for just a second here. The way After Effects works is 0, 0 is up here at the top left, right? And then whatever the size of your comp is, in this case, this one's 1920 by 1080. So 1920 on X and 1080 on Y is down here. And so half of that in this case is 965.40. That's our center point. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. It's just the way it works here. So let me see how much I can like do screen zooming as part of this. So I've got this 300 by 300 pink layer. That's my child. And this 400 by 400 parent will be parent. That's the white. Okay. And so half of 300 is 150, 150, right? So that's where the anchor point is because the anchor point is centered there. Okay. And then it's in comp space right now. So it's right in the middle at 965.40. You can see the anchor point of the 400 by 400 parent. Same thing, it's centered. So it's 200, 200. Centered in the comp, 965.40. Okay.
Okay.
So
I'm with you so far.
Yeah. So if I take this child, and let me see if I can do this magnified because these numbers are probably small. If I take this child and I parent it to this parent, watch what happens to the position value, okay? Bing, it changed. Because this child is no longer in comp space, it's now in the parent's layer space. And the center of that parent's layer space is what? 200, 200. That's why that changed, okay? So most of the time, you don't really need to worry about that. If you're doing parenting, you're probably just like, well, I'm going to move this thing, and then I can move this thing too. It's not a huge deal. But when that becomes really relevant is if you're trying to do expression stuff, because let's say I make a duplicate of this, make another one, just make it a different size so we can kind of see it here. And I'll reveal the anchor point and position of there. So this one's unparented, so it's in comp space now, right? And if I wanted to link this up to what this child is doing, I can't just link this position to this position because mathematically, like by those coordinates, it's getting the same number, but this one's in this parent's layer space and this one's in comp space. So they're not going to visually be the same, even though the numbers are the same. Hopefully that makes sense.
With you so far.
All right.
Also, but in the chat, do let us know if we lose you somewhere. We're like, this can sometimes be as confusing as like relativity or parallel dimensions. We're here on Earth Prime talking about After Effects Prime. So that's right. Also, let us know in the chat which Earth you're from, because
yes, please.
Your laws of physics and logic may be different.
So most of the time, most of it just get by ignoring that stuff, and it's fine until you're doing expressions. Also, just in case you're not familiar with using expressions, I'm going to kind of quickly point out the difference between parenting and expressions, just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page here. So up top, I've got a parent and a child. Down below, I've got a parent and what will be sort of an expression child. So if I take this one and I parent it to the parent here, it will now inherit all layer transforms, but based around this parent's anchor point. So if I scale it, see how it scales both of them from that anchor point? And if I rotate it, it's going to rotate everything from that anchor point, okay? The thing is, sometimes you maybe want to copy a value, but you don't want it to be tied together like that. So let's say I want to just copy the rotation value from this one, but not have it otherwise like scale or position move around with this, right? So this is what you can make simple expressions. You can Alt or Option click on a stopwatch here, and then just pick whip to another property. Has to be the same type of property. See, it just writes a little bit of code here that just says this layer, which is called rotation parent, and then I'm going to look at this property called transform rotation. And now I can rotate that, and it rotates the same, but notice it's still doing stuff around its own anchor point, and it ignores other properties that you mess with here, okay? Also, just in case you're not expressions savvy, the really powerful thing here is that you can add modifiers to this. Like I just added ×3. So if I wanted this to copy this layer's rotation, copy no other properties, but rotate 3 times as fast, this is a quick and easy way to do that, okay?
Very easy for making systems of gears, or I guess anything where one thing needs to be it's like a thing but different.
Yeah, exactly.
Any change, you can make any change using logic and math and a thing that drives another thing, right? That's really what we're doing with those concepts.
So, the times that you're going to need something like toComp are when, just as I pointed out here, when you've got something that you maybe want to tie to a thing that is parented to something else, because that's when you start losing. Like, these numbers don't really have much value to you anymore, because unless they're in the same layer space, those numbers are kind of useless. So here's an example. I had this robot arm from something else, and I gave him a little magic wand. He's doing a little bit of Harry Potter cosplay here, okay?
Ooh, flipendo.
And this is using Duick just to control it with an IK rig. And so obviously we want to give some fun little magical sparkles to the tip of our wand here, okay? And there's a lot of parenting going on because I'm using Duick rig here, so you can see there's some controller layers and stuff. But ultimately we have a top arm, where is it? Here, with its anchor point here. We have a forearm that is parented to that with its anchor point here. We have some claw hands that anchor point here. And then we have a wand that's parented to those, and then a null on the wand tip. So ultimately what we need to get is the position of this wand tip, but in relative to the way it's moving around, parented to parented to parented to parented, and this could be parented onto a body or whatever, right? Obviously we can't just have those numbers. So that's where toComp comes in, because we want to see what this point is in comp space, not this relative weird chain here.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a particle layer. Let me go in just a little bit. It's just a particular one of the presets here. And I have my emitter position revealed here. So I can move this around and I could keyframe it, but I don't want to keyframe it. I just want to tie it to that point. So if I use this expression right here, and I'm just using a variable here so that it's a little easier to read, I'm going to type in var or var, which is unnecessary, but I like it. Layer equals this wand tip, okay? And then I'm going to make a semicolon. I'll zoom in on this in a second when I'm done typing. Then what I need to say, I just called that variable layer. So I'm going to reference that layer toComp, and then it makes parentheses. And then we're going to reference the layer's anchor point. So we're looking at the anchor point of that layer in comp space, and After Effects will do the math for us here. And now, Leviosa.
Hey, tell us more about your Harry Potter spells, which are kind of like expressions, but for reality.
Kind of, yes. The Kids Science Center here in town had a Harry Potter day this weekend, so it's kind of on my mind right now.
Pierre Etienne was just asking what the language is, and then Logan's on it, Kyle's on it. It's JavaScript now, everybody.
It is.
It wasn't.
It used to be a weird flavor of it, and now it actually is JavaScript.
It's true JavaScript, the real JavaScript, which it opens up a whole other can of worms, because there is so much documentation and exploration around JavaScript already that exists in the world. So all of that is now available. So like a lot of different functions and operators, and we can get into what the hell those are, in a little bit. But let's continue on with the toComps. Let's keep it going.
Cool. So the thing that originated this question was shape layers and looking at the internal position of things. Much like when you have those parenting relationships, a shape layer has its own transform properties that work like every other layer. But then every path or parametric shape or group that you put into a shape layer has its own set of transform properties that are then relative to this layer's layer space. So as you can maybe see here, these positions are a little bit weird. It's 450, 0, 0, 0, minus 450, 0, because those are all relative to this layer's anchor point here, okay? So they're just offset in X. And that makes it really easy to set stuff up within a shape layer, but then kind of hard when you need to tie something else in the comp to it. So last week I showed this plugin called Shape Out, which you can look back, find out about that, or I'll put the link in this week's show note as well. And that's just sort of an automated way to do what I'm about to do, because you can manually keyframe these internal positions and all that, but you're never going to get motion paths, and it becomes a little abstract for some people. So instead, what you can do, I have a null here that I've animated. You can see I've got a couple keyframes, and then, let's just reveal that one. I took, where's my expression? Here we go. To this stars group transform, I added this expression to the position property. So you can go to comp. You can also pull back from comp. They're just ways to transform to and from comp space versus layer space, okay? And so using that, I'm directing it to watch this null's position and then kind of seeing that in this layer's layer space. And so now I can get fancy motion paths to go along with these internal shape properties. Or I could go the other direction and tie something to a shape that's moving around internally and so on and so forth. This also becomes really useful if you have 3D objects and you want to tie a 2D thing to it. Here I'm using the beam effect, which you can tie the start and end point to something. But in this case, the start and end point are 3D layers. You can see the circle and box here. And using toComp, sorry, I'm getting a little bit of adaptive resolution here. Yeah. You can see it stays tied to it even though these are 3D layers, because it's looking at what this point actually is in comp space. And if you're using toComp, it sees that through the active camera. If you use toWorld, which is similar, but it sees it in world space, it's independent of the camera, and that'll actually view like the real point in 3D space. So it'll view the Z as well if you need that. So, UI boxes, awesome. And then one of the ways that I use this the most is actually on effects that have internal position properties. So effects like Bend It or Gradient Ramp, or a lot of them that have these internal like start end properties, just like Beam does. Bend It's a great one because a lot of people probably apply this and then they do some bending and they're like, oh yeah, this is cool. And then shut off my adaptive resolution in here too. And then they move their layer around and go, wait, what happened? What's going on? Because
why broken?
Right, super broken. This layer is not looking at the layer's transforms, okay? That's just the way it works. But if you use this little expression, where's my thing? Here. No, wrong thing. Whatever, there we go. toComp, anchor point plus value. It's going to look at the anchor point of the layer that it's on plus its current value. So that means you can adjust it and put it where you want it, and it'll still follow around the layer, okay? So here's one. Here. I'll do this one legit so you can see that I am actually doing it. So toComp.
That's right. No fakery here.
Anchor point plus value. Okay, and I'm just going to highlight all and copy this and put it on end as well. Now what happens, you're like, oh no, it disappeared. Yeah, it's just because the math is funky now. So I just have to put those back where they actually go. And now, no matter what I do with the layer transforms, those points follow this thing around, okay? You can see in the UI that they're following it around.
Yeah, and this is
a great way to make like cool noodly stuff like this that actually follow the layer around. You see I have a gradient ramp on this as well. Those points are all just following this, whether I scale, rotate, whatever. They come along for the ride. So that is what toComp is useful for.
Yeah, and this is probably one of the biggest frustrations that a lot of people run into are effects that don't follow where the layer is going. That's probably some of the worst stuff.
Mhm.
Let's see. I think Kyle Zager's asking, why not just have it be something long and convoluted, like y equals transform dot position one minus. Oh
I
man,
feel like Kyle might be jesting just a bit there.
maybe
Um,
having a laugh with it.
I mean, obviously, I think you already know the answer to that, and it's because that's not fun to work with, or fun to read, or very adjustable.
Well, another interesting thing is with expressions, because everything can be relative, right?
Mm.
Then you can do a lot of things that are reflexive and responsive to
For
what.
example,
Yeah. Oh.
watch this. I'm
Oh.
gonna parent this multiple times here. Oops, not to an empty text layer. And just kind of keep moving these nulls around. So I have this thing's all parented up, and it still does everything relative to that original layer.
Right.
Okay.
There you go. That's it. Okay. All right. Where do we go next? Is there more toComps to get through? What's up?
That's the end of my toComp odyssey here.
Okay.
So let's see what other fun questions we have from people.
That's true. Well, actually, let's go back to you and I here. This is the part of the show where we've finished the kickoff question, right?
Oh,
And
you know what? I actually do have a couple of links I wanted to send. That's
God
what you were
damn.
asking me for.
That's right. I'm trying to. This is where I set you up and you smash the volleyball back in my face.
Yep, because I'm terrible. If you want to learn more about any expression functions at helpx.adobe.com, they explain all of them. There's also AE Hansers has a list. Good old Motion Script is kind of the Bible for this kind of stuff. And then there's a couple other good ones here. There's a guy named Parker who goes by Animoplex, has a really great series on YouTube that explains expressions in general, but has a nice one about toComp and toWorld. Euchromedia has an expressions course, and they have a short little free video here that goes over that as well. Mammo World has a nice little quickie explaining this. So again, these will be in the show notes, but there are tons of expression resources out there. So a lot of times it's just like knowing that a thing's possible, and then you can dig more into it.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the strange things, kind of the bumps to get over with expressions is knowing what you can even say to the computer and what you might do to it. So that's kind of where we're at. I want to thank everybody who's hanging out with us here. We got like 50 people hanging out here, which is great. But we are giving away a fabulous prize in order to try to incentivize more people to get in here. If you're able to tweet about the show using the URL putting out there, the URL Motion Design Hotline .com. That'll just redirect people here. If you can tweet about this stuff, get more people involved, get more people in here so we can share the love about what we're doing here, that would be great. And we're giving away a fabulous prize, something called multi-parent rigging, which is pretty great. This is a fun little program. I'll just little script. I'll just show you what it do on Evan's screen real quick. This is the kind of thing that allows one object, say this triangle, to have multiple parents and for it to be passed back and forth so they can co-parent, they can share custody of this one layer, they can push that layer back and forth between them by sliding the amount of influence that one parent has over the child. So, for example, this is where neither parent have any influence over it. This is where one of them has 100%. And then this is where the other one has 100%. And you can influence the scale, position, rotation. This is wonderful if you have a character that needs to hold a thing and then throw a thing. Or you just need something to be parented and then not. Or you need it to be parented to one thing and then another thing and then another thing. You can have up to 10 parents. So it takes a village to raise a layer. And if you're doing some advanced kind of rigging, pushing things around, and usually what we would do in this instance is we would split this layer, Command-Shift-D, and then one of them goes over to this other thing, and then
that's not fun.
Yeah, Command-Shift-D, and now it's picked up over there. And that's okay, but then you end up with like however many times this gets passed back and forth. This one only has it every other weekend, and that one has it every other Wednesday. It's a complicated custody arrangement between these nulls. Multi-parent rigging is going to make it a little bit simpler. So that is from Bear Studios, and again, like I said, if you can share the love about this show out there, we'll be able to give it away. Some lucky winner will be receiving that by the end of this program, which is coming up in like 40 minutes. So let's move it along and get to some of these cues. We got some cues building up in our queue. That's fun use of language. Classic wordplay here on the channel.
I see a good, easy, quick answer.
Oh yeah, here. What do you got?
So Pierre asked, does the expression language evolve/change between versions? So
yeah,
in reference to After Effects specifically, the short answer is no. The long answer is yes once. About a year and change ago, they updated the expression engine to modern JavaScript. It had been an older version that was kind of a special version of JavaScript. And just so you know, if you can take my screen real quick, I'll show you where you can double check to make sure that you're in the modern one.
Yeah.
If you look under File, Project Settings, especially if you open an older project, you might have some expressions that are not compatible with the current one.
Mm-hmm.
If you look under Expressions, you can be on the Legacy Extend script. That is the older version. JavaScript is the modern one. So if you open a new project and you have a bunch of an old project and you have a bunch of broken expressions because maybe the syntax isn't quite right or something, you can always revert to that legacy one. For the most part, you shouldn't run into that. If else is probably the most common thing where you might just run into some syntax errors.
Yeah, and there are, if you really need to fix things up, I believe there's a script that will run through and actually fix a lot of the common oopsies, the little grammatical syntax problems. They'll get all your braces, all your brackets, all of your parentheses correct. They'll get it going. Do you have that one installed, actually? Do you know what that's called?
I believe it just came with...
oh, yeah, it's baked in there.
Yeah. It just came with it because they knew that was a thing people were going to need to do. I forget what it's actually named, but
that's some forward-thinking stuff. Yeah. So, let's tackle in. So Chris Blaylock of San Francisco has asked if the questions need to be motion-related. I guess not. But then he also asked us if we're sure this is Earth Prime, to which I can say we can never really know. And it is a little arrogant to assume that we are the Prime universe. So just putting that out there. However, if you do have, more soft skill business questions, freelancer things, we can get into those. Anything you like, just fire it at us and we'll see what we can do. But we've been talking technical stuff this whole time. Let's get
squishy.
Yeah, let's get a little squishy. So speaking of Earth Prime, Clark Kent has asked, what is the process? No, wait, I don't know which one's Marvel and which one's DC. Don't at me about which is which. But Clark Kent asks, what is the process of deciding if you make a project in After Effects versus Animate CC? Now, this is kind of for those of you not familiar, Animate CC used to be called Flash, used to be called Flash MX, used to be called Macromedia Flash. Flash is and was, its workflow is more similar to traditional animation workflows. You can do shape tweens. You can do a lot of frame-by-frame things. It has onion skinning as a feature. So the break-even point for me, where I decide between one or the other if I'm going to employ one of them, and I will say, generally these kinds of questions aren't binary per se.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm going to do this or this. There may be elements of a project that require frame-by-frame traditional animation to make something liquid and blobby and straight ahead instead of pose to pose. So in those instances, I would fire open Animate CC and do the little things I need to do and then pull that into After Effects with other things that may be accomplished with keyframes with other things. Similarly, you might have a project where you have to pull elements. It's more effective to pull them from Character Animator, or it's more effective to create things in Cinema 4D, or all these other bits. After Effects is at its heart a compositor. So you are wise. It behooves you to kind of think of it in that way. And I will say that After Effects' kind of frame by frame situation is not great. It doesn't deal with that super well. A lot of people even turn to Photoshop to do their frame by frame kind of rotoscope style animation, or liquidy things, liquidy transitions. So it's all over the place, and that value decision for me comes down to, does it need to be organic and what we would call straight ahead animated, or can I get away with a few keyframes and a few tricks instead of doing it for real? What about you, Kyle? Where do you fall on this situation?
I have never really used Animate Flash too much. I kind of tried to get into it a couple times and just never really did. So I don't do a lot of frame by frame stuff. It's just not really my style.
That's true.
Because I don't know how to do it very well. So there you go.
Well, so that's kind of brings up another thing, that if you're most familiar with a certain tool, you're going to start to view problems in the context of that tool. So for you and I, After Effects is kind of the first thing that we think about using, and how are we going to solve this problem with this tool? Taking a more technology agnostic view can sometimes open you up to new ideas, new collaborations. It's definitely worth considering the problem before you consider the tool, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that. What else we got here in the cues? What's standing out for you?
So I saw one. It's a pretty squishy question. It could be technical. It could be not. My answer is not.
Okay.
So Josiah asked, what has been the biggest game-changing thing you've learned in After Effects for either workflow or for saving time while working?
Okay.
So, there's tons of just knowing stuff about the program, whatever program that may be, and scripts and plugins and websites and all that stuff. But honestly, I feel like the best answer to give here is good pre-production and good project management, client management, whatever that is in your situation.
Right.
Having a clear roadmap of where you're going with the project and communicating that clearly both to yourself and to the people who have to sign off on the thing is probably the best way to be efficient about a project and make sure that you're not going to have a bunch of dead ends.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So when we think about where are your biggest gains going to come from, right? If you're analyzing what you're doing from kind of a larger perspective, and when you look at your workflow, when you look at what you're doing and what you're creating and how you work, and you take a big view of it, right? You want to identify the areas that are the most painful and the most unpleasant. For me, in my early time, that came down to, I used to be a single comp kind of guy, Kyle. I used to stack up about 1,000 layers in one of those bad boys, and just kind of wing it all in one composition, right? I wanted everything to just flow, man. And to do that, I thought, let's put it all in one comp, right? The biggest shift for me was understanding what can be compartmentalized into its own pre-comps, what goes with what can be reused, and to look at areas where we can lock things off so they don't touch each other. And then once we're able to compartmentalize things, it becomes more efficient to work on each individual chunk in isolation. Even though I'm still the lead, I'm usually the only person on these projects. If you were farming this out to teams, say, and you're able to say, okay, scenes, from boards like 6 through 8, those all go together, but there's kind of a hard cut here and here. Then these ones go together. So this block that flows together, that's for you. This block flows to you. So that is useful. But in your own work, it's helpful to understand where the breaks are. Oh, man, Kathleen Illustrated. Hey, Kathleen's in the chat. Good to see you. That's great. We got some... Oh, Kyle, you better shape up. We have some real Adobe people hanging out in here. Oh, boy. I wish I wore a better shirt today. This several layers of grump is not doing it. But anyway, the point is that when, like you were talking about with pre-production and this idea of storyboarding things and planning it out, when you look at your storyboards, when you look at an AV script, it kind of informs, what is going to be its own isolated comp? What kinds of transitions can I do? And it's that compartmentalization that I think has had the greatest gains in my efficiency. Just saying, all right, here's a voiceover. I'm going to put it out on the timeline. Okay, these scenes are going to block those together. That's a bunch of comps. Okay, this gets nested. And trying to think of it that way, because then when notes come in, and they will come, always assume, maybe it was a mindset thing that changed for me, right? Because the mindset changed not from if notes, but when notes and what notes, and how, knowing that things will change really alters the way you're going to perceive when that happens. It's not super disruptive when you knew it was going to happen anyway. And this compartmentalization was such that, okay, well, in scene 5, part B, I know that this thing is isolated, and when I change it, nothing else changes, and that's fine. It's fine. And so it was a lot less disruptive when I was doing stuff up like that. So, hopefully that is helpful. Compartmentalize, isolate. It's great. It's good. So
and plan it out, because that helps you know which things can be isolated like that. And for any technical stuff that you're going to get into that are workflow boosters or whatever, that's going to help you know when it's appropriate to use those things and what's okay to pre-comp, what's okay to build with just keyframes, or what maybe you need to dig into an expression rig so that it's changeable for later or whatever.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting, because we were talking about animate CC and when do I use this and when do I use that? Well, that question actually gets answered during that pre-production phase when you break down the individual elements. What are we going to create? Oh, this idea can only be accomplished in a true 3D solution, or this idea could be done in a fake 3D way, or this one has to be done frame by frame. You're able to isolate what needs what tools. So yeah, hopefully that helps, Josiah. What else we got in here? What's building up in our queue?
I don't know if I have a great answer for this one that I'm wiggling around in our secret board that you viewers can't see.
That's right. This is Kyle and Evan's secret.
I have some sort of answers.
Okay. Because this is about export, right? They want an animated logo on a website. They have gradient transparency. Is there a file type that supports the transparency is web friendly? Now, Kyle, you and I actually watched a genius do this live in Vegas. Right?
Exactly. That's pretty much what I was going to reference here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you take it away. You know.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to.
We'll see. I may
don't
not
want to step on your rhymes.
My answer to this, but.
Oh no! Okay, I think I'll just keep interrupting.
So this is from Zach McNabb. And so, to my knowledge, I believe GIF does support transparency, but probably not. I'm sure gradient transparency would be pretty janky. If there's somebody in here who has a better answer, then feel free to dive in. There's a couple different answers for this, depending on kind of where this thing needs to live. If you're using something like, as Jess just threw out, body moving, you can export animations that will actually live more natively on the web from After Effects with, very specific kind of lanes that you need to stay in to be able to do that. I don't know about the gradient friendliness of body moving. Again, if any of you in the chat know more about that, then hit me with it. But I'm probably not going to be able to find you an answer real quick, because this is a little bit of a nuanced question. But Chris Converse, who does a lot of presenting at conferences, I know he'll be at Adobe Max. He does a lot of really crazy stuff using After Effects in a super different way than we do, like to generate sprite sheets and stuff like that for websites that he builds. And it is possible, I'm not webby enough to tell you how, but you can like use code, CSS, I assume, to help pinpoint areas of transparency within like a sprite sheet that you're running on a site and stuff like that. So like I said, I know how, satisfying of an answer it is, but I feel like it's possible.
Yeah, you're going to want to look into basically CSS sprite sheet animation, and some of it will come down to what the infrastructure of your website is, obviously. But this is good for things that are like smoke and that kind of thing, right? That are like little subtle things that work. So yeah, basically the methodology is here's a sprite sheet, here's our really big pinch, and now we're just gonna move the pinch over a little bit every frame, and that's pretty much it. That's all you're really doing, and it's the similar way that we use linear in After Effects to accomplish that, right? It's start at this position, move this much every this much time, and then loop it. So those are kind of good ways to make that happen, and I think this probably stems from the fact that GIFs with transparency, not a good combo, and GIFs or GIFs in general, not super
a great format. It's like a 25 to 30-year-old format at this point, and it just happens to still be around. It's kind of like VHS.
It's old.
The option, but
I think it's more like Laserdisc. No. Well, no one uses VHS anymore, but we still use the GIF, right? So it's and it has its new life, and soon HTML5 will come from behind and destroy it. But we'll see. Time is running out for you, Mr. GIF. We'll get you.
As a quick follow-up, Zach, who asked the original question, said, yeah, GIFs are only 0 or 1 for transparency. Frowny face, found out the hard way, LOL.
Yeah. And and then Kyle Zeger, I think, is talking about steps. That was the term that we were missing, is you want to take them steps. But yeah. So what else we got in here? Let me see. I've been staring at the chat too much. Let's see.
This one's okay. Let's see. There's a couple. We're kind of getting to the point where we might be looking for last couple questions here pretty soon. Do giveaways and such.
That's true. We keep getting into these softer things and not opening up After Effects as much. It's a pretext that we will do technical things, but then if that's I actually wanted to jump into one.
Okay, do it.
Because Kyle, you started us talking about toComp. I would love for you to just explain, because Jonathan Hunt is asking another example about when you would use toWorld or fromWorld. Just to, I want to keep us on theme. I'm in the producer chair. I'm here to make sure that we stay thematic. So toWorld, fromWorld, that is going to give us 3D information, right? A three-parter for where this thing lives in the world. When would you use that? Why are you using it? And shrug emoji.
Right. So I am not going to attempt to make a toWorld example on the fly. But if you need that 3D information,
right?
You need that actual 3D point to feed to something else. That's when you want toWorld.
Right.
So kind of like my earlier example, like particular functions in 3D space,
right?
As do some other particle generators, even though it's technically a 2D layer. So that's kind of a good example. Like if that robot arm was part of a 3D rig and you wanted to get the actual 3D position of that point so that it could like wave around in Z space as well, that's probably a good example of when you would want toWorld. The Animoplex example that I pointed out, let me see if I could pull that up real quick on my screen. Actually, he does a good example there that he is parenting a camera to a planet that is rotating around.
Oh, yes. Because just like you showed with toComp, when you parent a 2D thing to a 2D thing and move it around. Two World is going to solve that same problem for parenting a 3D thing to a 3D thing to a 3D thing. You'll get its not its relative position, but its true place in the world. That's
right.
Which,
and so then you end up with something like this, where you could actually parent a camera to a thing that is orbiting something else in 3D space.
Yeah.
It's even more niche than toComp already is, but it's when you run into that problem, that is the solution to it.
Right. Well, I guess what's interesting that a lot of expressions seem very narrow and niche, but when you need them, you need them, right? I didn't know that I would need to sort arrays, but when it happened, and I had to sort that array, and it's interesting that when it comes up, you're glad it can do it. Pierre is asking if there's grog inside this mug. There is not. There is green tea and honey in this mug because I am very sick. I'm sick today, and I'm sick every day, but today I'm physically ill, which is why my voice sounds like garbage extruded through cheesecloth. Yeah.
But that's how committed Evan is to this show.
That's right, folks. I put my body on the line for you. Okay, so I want to just reiterate, we are giving away a fabulous prize today. It's multi-parent rigging by Bear Studio. Kyle has been diligent about keeping a record of everyone tweeting about the show and collecting that stuff. And we're going to use the power of random number generation to give away that wonderful license. But while that's happening, I'm gonna thank everyone again for coming out. If you're coming in late to this show and you missed a whole bunch of it, well, you can catch the replay later. It's all going to be archived here for all time, all space. Let's see,
comp space and layer space.
That's right. It's going to be in comp space. It's going to be in layer space. It's going to be in all these spaces. We've got kind of a buildup of questions, so we may not be able to get to all of them that come in, but that's why you got to tune in for the next show. Because we get the ones that overflow, we reuse them. Yeah. We don't let any question fall onto the floor because that's how we do it. So what do we have in here? We've talked about Two World.
I kind of like. I mean, this one's squishy here.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, I can pontificate on that if you'd like while you sort out your random number generator over there. So. Alan's Workshop says, I can't focus. There's so many parts to motion graphics. Can you... Oh, now you've moved it around in the thing.
Sorry.
No, don't move it back. Can you share, how you stay focused when developing motion graphic skills? Did I start in graphic design or video? So Alan, I started in, I guess, technically video with this stuff. One of the interesting things about focus... I love these kinds of things.
Is my screen still up, by the way?
That's true. Let's go back to our faces.
I know. Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry. So, Alan, one of the things about focus is like any skill, or I want to say it's you can train it. You can train your focus, and people do train themselves to be much more focused. One of the kind of methods that one would do to do that is just set a timer, do one activity for the amount of time, and then take a break, and then come back to it and start increasing that amount of time. I still do that with all of my work all the time. I literally set a timer for 50 minutes, and then when the 50 minutes is up, I'm on to have a little break ski, walk around, stretch my legs, keep everything fresh, then come back to it. So I'm usually 50 on, 10 off is my kind of usual situation. Now, that's not the same for everybody. Maybe you have to work your way up there. But this idea of what part of motion graphics, what part of motion design do I want to latch onto? We got 3D. We got traditional stuff. People come to this field from all over the place. You might be coming here from the video world where you made a fun lower third and now you think this is your life. Or you're coming to this from a 3D video game perspective, or you're coming from there's so many ways to get here, right? To get to motion design, and it's a very fluid space. Everyone's trying to get a hand on what it is and define the thing. That's why it's very confusing and nebulous. And to know it all you would need a giant mind in order to hold all of this stuff. The main thing you want to do is you really want to hone in on something that really attracts your interest. I'm kind of lucky because when I was younger, I was a very lonely child and kind of an indoor kid. So to make things and draw things was a wonderful escape for me. And so I would lose myself in what we call the flow state of this. Time would go away, right? We would lose. Thank you, Kyle. That's what the flow state looks and feels like. And I'm sure this is something that anyone who's kind of passionate about a thing has experienced, that when you're doing the thing that aligns with you strongly, you're going to experience that flow state. I don't know if anyone here is interested in something called Creative Mornings. This is an interesting program. They were talking about flow. I think that's their latest topic on that, this idea of the flow state. And is the sort of thing you want to try to train yourself to slip into and to experience more often. Some people feel it when they're at the gym. Some people feel it when they're playing music. It really depends on what aligns with you. But that's kind of the trick, is that when you're trying to develop a skill, if it's something that you find grinding and unpleasant, that's not going to work. We are creatures that habitually move towards comfort, right? This is why, I have a lot more chin growth than usual, because I'm habitually moving towards comfort as opposed to the discomfort of other activities, right? For me, it is comfortable to do this for a long period of time. It is uncomfortable for me to do other things. So you can, like I said, you can increase your amount of focus in small bursts. One of the main things, though, is not to be upset with yourself. Everyone loses focus all the time. We've lost focus several times on this very show, so it happens. But if you ever do anything like meditating, they say if you lose focus, don't worry about it. Acknowledge you've lost focus and then just redirect it back. It's fine. You're gonna build up the resistance to losing your focus over time. Now, it's not to say some people have ADHD or some actual, some diagnosable hurdles to overcome in these areas. But there are sort of treatments, therapies, there are methods, there are ways we can hack ourselves to do things. I don't know, Kyle, you seem like a very focused person. Like you balance more in your life than I do. I'm living that dual income, no kids life over here. It's my wife, myself, and our dog, and we have no responsibilities to anybody. We can be as crazy with our time as we want, right? But you've got people who expect you to be places. How do you stay focused?
I have someone whose very survival depended on me for a while. He's probably feed himself now, but
okay. Well, he'd feed himself Legos, so I don't think you want to let him do that.
I mean, the secret to a lot of that stuff, I feel like, is nobody really knows what they're doing. We all just kind of figure it out. I think, I don't know if I have anything nearly as profound to say. Like, you kind of just, I don't know, figure out what is right for you in terms of getting stuff done, getting distracted, staying on task. I know people who, for example, shut off their email all day. They answer emails first thing in the morning and then at the end of the day and nowhere in between.
Right.
Because you were talking about flow state, and like if you get in the zone and you're rocking on a project and then bing, your email comes up, you're done. And I forget the exact statistic, but it takes something like 20 minutes to actually get fully back into what you were doing. So
now, Kyle, have we both read the same book by Cal Newport, Deep Work?
I'm probably ultimately referencing that, even though I've never read it directly. But Evan's dying over there. So I think a lot of it, too, in terms of, there we go. Especially if you're learning new skills or wanting to develop your skills, figure out what works for you. Obviously, there's a million random YouTube tutorials by some idiot who. Which way? I always have to point back.
Where's my camera? I'm the microphone.
There's a million random tutorials around the internet, and some of them are good, and some of them are garbage.
Okay.
There's a lot of them that are by 12-year-olds that don't know what they're doing, and it's just trance music the whole time and whatever. If doing something like Linda, which is now LinkedIn Learning, Skillshare, School of Motion, I highly recommend. Like maybe something like that is structured. Something like School of Motion or MoGraph Mentor that keeps you accountable to other people. You at least have some social pressure. Like figure out what it is that you need to stay on course with your development in those skills, and that'll help you maybe get past that hump.
Oh, I think that's so important because not everyone learns the same. Not everyone is motivated by the same factors, right? Like some people need a coach in the gym to yell at them, right? Mm-hmm. But for other people, that would repel them right out of there, right? Some people want social pressure. Some people would avoid social pressure, right? You have to find out what kind of works. So I don't know.
Oh, and School of Motion's here and hearted us.
Oh, well, we heart School of Motion also. So yeah. Kyle, I think you have the video open. I'm hearing my voice come back through your microphone.
Really? I do have it open, but it's muted.
Oh well. Well, then I don't know what that is. Anyway, I guess we should give away our fabulous prize, Kyle.
We do. I picked a winner via random number generator, and said winner is here in the chat. So,
oh man, who dis?
Are we ready? Do we need a little drum roll? I'm doing it anyway.
Okay.
Chris Blaylock.
Oh dang! Friend of the show, Chris Blaylock. It's won. Oh man, Chris, you're gonna love this thing. Get at us in the DMs on the Twitter. Kyle, you leave your DMs wide open.
Wide open.
I also leave my DMs wide open. So if you guys ever have questions, you can fire them at us on the Twitter. But Chris Blaylock from San Francisco, California, in the Bay Area, get at us, and we will hook you up with your wonderful prize of multi-parent rigging. So you can finally enjoy having like 10 parents. Which, look, I don't want to make a San Francisco joke, but that sounds pretty normal for San Francisco. Yeah, so there we go. I guess, so Kyle, we got like 2 minutes left here on the program. We have time to, is there any like short ones in here?
Let me see.
I don't know.
I mean, this could be a very long answer, but what would be your ultimate feature request for After Effects, says Pierre.
Right. I think this is a good way to end the show. Keep it optimistic here. So when we're talking feature requests, you can go to Adobe User Voice, and you can
that link in a second.
Yeah, and you can add requests, you can thumbs up requests. The After Effects team, and shout out to anyone on the After Effects team.
Absolutely.
That like we sometimes give them a lot of heat because the software doesn't do exactly what I want, but they're a relatively small team trying to maintain a thing and create new things and decide what belongs, like, what goes in the next release, what features to work on. The only way they know is if you tell them. And so one of the things that I would like are arrays. So there are plenty of third-party plugins and stuff that do arrays, but I would love to see it as a native shape layer thing that we can use the repeater to create arrays and use them kind of in the same way that Cinema 4D approaches them, or this, even I would settle for them behaving the same way a text layer approaches them, right?
I have asked for specifically that, as has Mikey.
And I have thumbs up that. So for me, that's probably number one, because shape layers are something I touch all the time. Just about everything I make is shape layer based. And after having touched Cinema 4D a lot more this year, I'm starting to really appreciate just the ability to create and manipulate arrays of things, move them into shapes, and it's altering the way I'm thinking about my workflow in general and how I would accomplish more complex ideas. So that's where I'm at. So please thumbs up that one in Adobe User Voice. Kyle, what's your number one future feature request? What do you want to see in future After Effects?
I I don't know if I could pick just one, but I'll be quick about my stuff.
What are your desert island discs?
Yeah, shape layers getting some love in general, I think is needed.
Yeah.
They've been around for over a decade and really haven't developed since then. They're super powerful, but could be more powerful.
Oh, Kyle, I just remembered the day when I saw that they existed. So now I'm going to crumble into dust.
Mm-hmm, yep. I think getting I do not see performance issues in After Effects. I have gotten, maybe I'm just lucky or I'm careful with my machines or something. I know a lot of people have problems, but for the last several versions, mine's been very stable and it works well.
Right.
But I know that's a thing a lot of people talk about. And so I do know that that's a thing that the team is aware of, and they have commented publicly about being aware of that. So, that would be a good thing for people in general to get the kind of performance that they're expecting out of it would be, I think, good. I feel like I had one more quick one, but I have forgotten it. So those are my answers.
Bring back Brainstorm.
I want Brainstorm, and I mention that often. I really liked it.
That was a fun. Some of you out there won't remember this weird feature that you could select a bunch of properties, hit Brainstorm, and it would start altering them in weird ways and basically give you a grid. The original would be in the middle, 8 things around it, and I feel like this was some proto-artificial intelligence stuff that you would just start to get your way towards things that are kind of close, kind of inspiring. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It was so weird and interesting. I would love to see it apply some artificial intelligence with like just compositional things. Like, I don't have any ideas. Give me some ideas.
Yeah.
I reject those.
That feels like something that's probably a good third-party developer situation at this point. Probably not going to see it native again. I don't think it got used that often, but it seems like a lot of power users are the ones who are sad about it.
Look, Adobe, if you're watching, I have a lot of thoughts about what to do with artificial intelligence. Get at me, and I will share them with you. But I want to thank everybody out there, all of y'all in the chat. I've lost count of how many people are in here. I guess 66 of you right now.
Nice.
A nice round number, a nice Empire-based number here in the chat. Thank you all for joining us here, spending your Friday morning, afternoon, whatever with us.
Evening even.
Yeah, whatever it is for you. Thank you for sharing it with us. Thanks for bringing us your questions. I know we didn't get to all of them, but you come around next week because we have a pile of them to get to, so we will not run out. And some of them are just, we have to spend some time and think about them. So we'll go away, we'll put some ideas together, and we'll come back to you with them. I'm Evan Abrams. Thank you so much for watching. We're here with Kyle Hamrick. Kyle, where can people learn more about you? Where can they find more of your stuff? Where can they see you live?
Well, you can follow me on the Twitters there. I'm at kylehamrick.com. Yep. I will be appearing live at the Keyframes Conference in Boston, November 15th through 17th. You can go to keyframesconference.com and see all the other speakers that are way cooler than me that will be there.
Well, that's true. And Kyle, don't let it be said that you're the only one that goes places. I'm actually going to Ukraine next week. I'll be speaking at Design Village 2019. So if we have any Ukrainian people watching this, see you next week, I guess. Because we don't have a live show next week, Kyle. We do not. I know. Oh, no. Shame of shames. But instead, we are going to be revisiting the old school MoChat format. So just tweet at us. Hashtag Motion Design Hotline.
It's a bit of a mouthful or fingerful, I guess.
Maybe you want to abbreviate that to just MDH. That doesn't mean anything, right? Probably. Okay. Just hashtag MDH. Give us your questions. We'll be following that at kind of the same time, and we'll try to get back at you. Depending on my internet situation where I'm at, things may be good, maybe bad. I might be in a series of talks and meetings, so we don't know. But we will try to get at your questions. Thank you again for coming out. If you like this kind of thing, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so that you know when this happens.
And tell other people to watch.
That's true. And you'll win fabulous prizes, just like Chris. Anyway, thanks again. Thank you so much. We're going to sign off here once I get the control panel. And that's it. So we'll just click, 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 and we'll see you around. Thanks again, and have a nice day.